Good evening and welcome to this special broadcast which is brought to you by Government Communication and Information System as well as the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. It is season 6 of Let's Talk Justice. As you remember, we had 5 seasons in the past previous 5 years, and where we discussed and engaged with you on various aspects of legal connotations and implications in your daily life with various topics that we talked about. Tonight, we're starting with 3 bills approved by Cabinet in the fight against GBV. As you know, in South Africa, we have a new pandemic outside of the COVID-19, and there was quite a lot of discussions as well as concerns around the GBV cases that actually escalated during COVID-19, especially when booze was introduced. But yeah, we will definitely be talking towards that. But the main aim today is to create awareness and to raise awareness about the new bills approved by Cabinet that are related to gender-based violence. We also seek to educate the public about the provisions of these bills. And we're also going to be showcasing measures government is putting in place in the fight against GBV. And without any further ado, you know you are able to connect with us using social media at DOJ_CD. It's actually at DOJCD_ZA. On Facebook, we are on the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. And tonight, the number that we're using is 0800 314 446. 0800 314 446 is the number to dial. And Pumeza Zazama Busela is the one who will be taking your calls. And don't be afraid to speak to her. If you don't hear this voice, it's not me actually who's taking the calls, it's Pumeza. And thanks to Mfundo Makaba, who is actually making sure that this is coming to you live and direct, and the quality is as you hear as we speak right now. Let me introduce our guest. He's the Deputy Minister of Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, Ndate John Jeffery. Welcome, and thank you so very much for gracing us with your presence. And let's get to this thing, and welcome, sir.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Good evening to everyone listening in.
All right. Now, there's these 3 bills that I'm not sure if they were approved during COVID-19 lockdown or if it's something that was in progress before then. Take us through that and from its initial process up to where it is right now.
All right. Thanks very much. These bills were approved by Cabinet, I think, 2 weeks or a week ago, so it's pretty recent. They're in the process of being introduced into Parliament. One of them, the Criminal Law Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Bill, has been introduced. It was introduced yesterday into the National Assembly. It's Bill 16 of 2020. You know, when a bill gets introduced, it then gets given a number, which will be the number bill it is for that year. So yes, it's the 16th bill for 2020.
That's right.
And what these bills do is, we've got, as I think everybody knows, you referred to the pandemic. The President also spoke about that we have a second pandemic, which is gender-based violence, of women being beaten, killed, raped, many of them by their partners or by people that they know. And there was the Presidential Summit on Gender-Based Violence. One of the issues in the declaration was that laws need to be reviewed, to be tightened. And so as Department of Justice, what we've done is reviewed laws relating to domestic violence and to sexual offences in particular, and tightened them up. And so they're amendment bills effectively to other laws that are already there. and that's what they do. I don't know if you'd like me to run through each one.
All right. Okay. Can you take us through each and every one of them,
Okay.
just to highlight what exactly are they speaking to?
Okay. Let me start with the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill. Now, the Domestic Violence Act was passed just over 20 years ago in 1999, so it's quite old. What that did, and it was lauded in its time as being quite groundbreaking, what that does is provides that where somebody in a domestic relationship, which would be somebody in a physical love relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, but also people part of the same family, people living in the same household, that if you were being threatened by your domestic partner, that you could then apply to court with quite an easy process and get an order from the court stopping the other party from abusing you. And that order could even say that that person, if it's a woman bringing it and it's her husband, that he was not allowed in the house. He could be evicted. He could be allowed in the house but not in the bedroom. Those kinds of things. So once you go to court or the police station, you do an affidavit setting out what's been happening, and it then gets submitted to a magistrate who, if you meet the criteria, grants the order. Once it's served on the person you're complaining about, then it becomes binding. And if he breaks it, then he can be arrested and charged for that. So this bill is trying to tighten that up. So some of the things it does is that it widens the category of people that can apply for the bill, and the one issue that's specifically been added is that elderly people can now make use of this. It provides for that people can, as I said, you go to court and you apply, make the affidavit, and you can apply at court, but there's now provision in the bill that you can apply online. You'd obviously have to load up the affidavit. Doesn't mean that you've got to do it, you've got to have a computer at home, but you could go somewhere where people can help you. It sets up a central registry for domestic violence orders, because some of the problems that we've been experiencing is that an order will be granted in one magisterial court, and then the person against whom the order is made beats up his partner in another magisterial court jurisdiction, and the people at the second court don't know about the protection order. And it sets out the services that people are entitled to when they are victims of domestic violence. There's also a new provision which is that people have to, if they have knowledge that domestic violence is going on, there's a duty to report it, and it's criminalized if they don't. That's quite contentious. The reason it's there is that you'll have a situation where a particular family will know that the husband is beating his wife, but then they will hope that he will stop, that he will see the error of his ways. They don't want to talk about it, they don't want to do anything about it, and eventually he kills her. So it's to criminalize that. There's provisions to make it easier for the police to arrest a person. There's provisions that if the perpetrator has a licensed firearm, for example, before he's been able to escape having that firearm taken away from him by saying, no, I need that firearm for work, I'm a police person or I'm a security guard. Now that doesn't apply anymore. There needs to be a prosecution if there's a requirement for a prosecution if a weapon is used in the assault. So those are some of the provisions in that bill to tighten things up.
All right. Remember, if you have just joined us, this is the special program. It's episode 1 of season 6. It's Let's Talk Justice. It's coming to you every Thursday, starting now until the 20th episode. And right now, the Deputy Minister, John Jeffery, has just alluded to 3 bills that have been approved by Cabinet only last week. One being the Criminal Law, Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Act Bill of 2020, and the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Bill of 2020, and Domestic Violence Amendment Bill of 2020. And this evening we're talking these three bills, and we are going to make sure that you understand what they mean in your life, as these are not just writings in a piece of paper and just to be filed somewhere in Hayes or in Union Building or somewhere at the Department of Justice or even at the Government Communication and Information System. So I'll tell you how we're going to do this now. We seem to be having a bit of a technical problem getting the lines onto where we are able to hear you. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask Pumeza to actually take your comments and your questions on 0800 314 446 314 446. It's 0800 314 446, and we will be able to say it up on air, and then the DM will be able to engage all your questions, your comments, as well as maybe your concerns, or maybe you just want to say thank you. The Constitution is really working for you. And also, if you want to know more about these three bills, please do talk to us, 0800 314 446. Otherwise, join us on social media using hashtag Let's Talk Justice, and we are on Twitter at DOJ. Let me just see it properly here. It's DOJCD_ZA, and then on Facebook it's the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Now, I'm not sure if this is too general, DM, to say what is each of these bills seeking to achieve. And maybe if we just look at it one by one, you've already alluded which one is which one, what does it do. But now, let's put it into daily practice of anybody's life. Maybe, for instance, let's just take the first one as it is, which is the Sexual Offences, the Criminal Law Sexual Offences Amendment Bill. Now, it speaks to all these rapings, all these sexual abuse manners that we know, all different types. Some of them I don't even know. Probably people who know through experience will be able to elaborate a bit more on that. Let's talk what it seeks to achieve in terms of curbing the tendency of sexual abuse.
All right. Look, I went through the domestic violence bill, which is a civil bill.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not criminal. It's about protection orders.
Yes.
The Criminal Law Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Bill is amending the Sexual Offences Act, and that's a criminal. The other two bills relate to criminal law. So what that bill does is, first of all, it establishes a new crime, or sets up a new crime of sexual intimidation. So if you threaten somebody that you're going to rape them, or you're going to force them to rape somebody else, or you're going to sexually violate them, then or if you expose if you expose their private parts, then you've committed a crime. So that's a new crime that is there. The main aspect is that the Sexual Offences Act has a national register for sexual offences.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that when the Sexual Offences Bill was being passed by Parliament back in 2007, Parliament thought it was a good idea. And what's in the Act at the moment is that if you commit a sexual offence against a child, that's a person under the age of 18, or a mentally disabled person, then your name goes onto the Sexual Offences Register. And people employing people to work with children or mentally disabled people, they must check the register when they're about to employ someone to check that that person's name is not on the register.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, it proved quite cumbersome and difficult, and it's only sort of recently become operational because of a variety of problems. What this amendment bill is doing is that it is changing things. It is saying, no, it's not just raping a child. it's any sexual offence. So you commit a sexual offence, you get found guilty of that, your name goes onto the register. And then the number of employers whose who have to check whether the person's name is on the register has been increased from just people employed to look after children and mentally disabled people to a much broader group of people. It's basically, there's a category of a vulnerable person who's vulnerable. So obviously it would include the original categories, but it's then also a woman under the age of 25, a person who's being cared for or sheltered in a facility that provides services to victims of crime. The disability is no longer just mental, but any form of disability. And then it also includes old people, people who are over 60 years or of age. So that's been widened. There's also provision for the public to have access to the names of people on the sexual offences register. So that's also another improvement. So that's an attempt to tighten up the Sexual Offences Act. Shall I move to the last one?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the last bill then is a more general one called the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Bill. And what that does, again, it's dealing with criminal law. The first issue is that currently where a witness is a child or a disabled person, they can give evidence through an intermediary. And what happens in court, and usually in the sexual offences courts, the witness is testifying in a room not in the main court, and it's being relayed by closed circuit television to the court. Now the people who can apply to use I was explaining what happens with the intermediaries. So when the person is being questioned by the prosecutor or the defense lawyer, they put the question to the intermediary, and the intermediary will then phrase it in such a way that the child can understand it. The child will then answer it, and the intermediary will relay that back to the court, also putting it in a way, but the court will be hearing everything, even what the child says, what the intermediary says. Now, what this bill is doing is widening the people who can use intermediaries, that it's not just limited to those people. If a person is in, I think it's distress, they can then use intermediaries. So I think a lot of people were shocked with the Pastor Amatoso case, where the survivor Cheryl Zondi was being harassed by the defense lawyer. Now, when this law comes into effect, she would be able to apply to the court to say, no, I don't want to be asked the questions directly. I want to be asked through the intermediary, which would prevent that secondary victimization. We're trying to stop the situation where victims, survivors feel that they're going to get raped again in court by having to relive the experience. So that's the one aspect. Then the other is it tightens up provisions relating to bail. Some of the key things are that the person has to disclose if they have a protection order against them. And if they don't, then they can lose their bail if it's found that they did. There's issues of currently, if you're arrested, you can get police bail for minor cases, or the prosecutors can give you bail for more serious cases. For gender-based violence cases, those are taken away. You have to wait until you appear in court. You can't get arrested in the afternoon and be out home in the evening. And the sentences are also made tighter. So again, all of them are trying to tighten the laws and cut out the loopholes when it comes to domestic violence and gender-based violence.
All right. 0800-314-446, 0800-314-446. I see that there's a call on the line now. All right. We seem to be having Ntombi, who's calling from Soweto. Ntombi, I'm going to just ask you to just go straight onto your point or your question, and we will take it from there, as we are not able to hear you quite very well. Go ahead, Ntombi. All right. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask Pumeza to get onto the microphone, so that she's able to get us something, because we cannot actually hear the callers with the DM this side. I think it's more, we're using the Cape Town studios today, so it's been quite some time, so I think we cannot be able to hear, but I believe everybody got to hear what Ntombi was saying. So I'm going to ask Uzaza to come over this side to just maybe elaborate that, so that we're going to run this thing as a team now. We're going to, Zaza, welcome, and just give us in brief what Ntombi was talking about.
Sis Ntombi is saying her sister is being abused by her partner, and they want to know, they have a child together, and they want to know what can they do as her family to actually save her or help her.
All right, DM.
Sorry,
she has got a sister who is being abused by this gentleman. They got a kid together, and basically they cannot intervene because it's like two cannot be invaded by the next person. So they don't know what to do except go into the police every now and then, and 2 weeks down the line the guy is off, and the lady, they are back together again. It's just a vicious cycle of people who keep fighting and getting back together again.
Yeah, that's a difficult one, because and it's why I think domestic violence is difficult for the state to deal with, because you can't police people's bedrooms. Obviously they need to report it to the police, but it depends on the which she says that they're doing. It is also really, I mean, the person who's got to decide where she stands is the sister. You know, does she still want this relationship? Is she safe in the relationship? Abusers can end up killing you. I think the general trend is that once a man starts abusing a woman, he doesn't stop. He can ask for forgiveness, say that he'll never do it again, but that's actually not what happens unless he seeks help. So I think it's issues of trying to engage more with her. I'm not sure if she's dependent on him financially, and that's possibly a reason for not wanting to move out.
Because she keeps coming back.
She keeps coming back. Look, she can get can claim maintenance from him, so she doesn't need to be living with him for him to support the child in particular. But ultimately, she's got to decide what she wants to do, and I understand from the research that people in relationships where there's domestic violence often battle to come out of it. The man will often destroy their self-esteem, make them lack confidence, those kinds of things. So it's difficult, but I would urge that that the caller can't just leave it, because things may go bad. The sister might get killed. So it needs to be looking at ways of engaging with the sister, maybe speaking to a social worker, trying to ensure that if he is, because one of the other problems with when they report it to the police, he's being charged, and the sister may be withdrawing the charges and saying, no, I don't want to continue, and that may be why he's being released.
All right. But now, what is the bill saying about that kind of intimidation that we're talking about, DM, where somebody is working consistently on putting you down and giving you no hope of actually asking for help for yourself? I would like to believe that this has been an ongoing trend from many of the abusers, and surely somewhere somehow the bill should be able to address that directly somehow. I'm not sure how it works.
Look, the definition of domestic violence is very broad in the Act as it is at the moment. So it's not just physical abuse or sexual abuse, it's also verbal, emotional, psychological abuse, economic abuse, and so on. As I said, coercive behavior, controlling behavior, elder abuse, spiritual abuse have been added. So when that happens, you can go to court and apply for an order to protect you. The problem is where there is provision for other people to apply for an order on your behalf. I would just need to check whether, that is limited to, it was limited to children. I'm not sure if we're changing that. But the problem is with adults is that they're expected to decide themselves what they want to do. So it's almost a vicious circle. You're being subjected to emotional abuse, which makes you afraid, which makes you feel that you can't go and apply for the order. So it's a more difficult situation.
All right. Let's take one more caller. Tulani from Makaza. Tulani, please go ahead with your comment and question directly. Remember, we cannot hear you directly, but we will be able to hear you as you speak once we switch off some of our stuff in here. Go ahead, Tulani. All right, Tulani is not in there, but anyway, we got to ask Tulani what he's about to ask DM, but he's saying, what took so long to review these laws? Because probably he understands it like it's a review, and then the amendment bill came into place. And the second one is that how are they going to make sure that the laws are fully applied? Because I would like to think that from the law perspective, you might put in the bills and all that stuff, but now implementation would need the support of the police and the law enforcement agencies and all that stuff. Are you working with them to make sure that as it comes out, they are able to implement and actually uphold the law enforcement in that regard?
Yeah, look, as far as what took so long, as I said, it was from the presidential summit and the declaration. So unfortunately, legislation's not something that can be redone overnight. And where this legislation is now, it's being introduced into Parliament. The public will be given an opportunity to comment on the bills, to make further proposals on them, and then they've got to be passed by firstly the National Assembly and then the National Council of Provinces. So what I'm trying to say is the legislative making process is not a short one. And even though we've got bills now in Parliament, there's still there's still a lot of work to be done before they can become law. As far as how do we make sure that they're enforced? The laws are the public servants, the people enforcing the laws, the clerks of the court, the magistrates, the prosecutors, the police people. Well, they're all human beings. I was going to say unfortunately, but it's a good thing that they're not robots.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, human beings do have their own attitudes, do have their own things, moods that they're in on that particular day, do have their own views. So there is a problem which we're aware of with the police, of people complaining they go to the police to get help and they're told to go back to their husband. We've had a problem of people come to court looking for a protection order and they don't get helped by officials.
Yeah.
What is important that whenever anything like that happens, people must report it. They must either try and get the name of the person who who did this to them, who's refusing to help them, the police person, the court official, or if they can't get the name, they must report that at this particular time I went to the station and this police person who wouldn't give me his name, who looked like this, he's the one who was saying I must just go home.
Yes.
I mean, the Minister of Police, I've been at a march with him with police where he had said to the police, if you send a woman home who's come in for for help during domestic abuse, you can be sending her to her death, which is true. But it requires, whenever there's a problem, that people must report it so that it can be investigated, action must be taken against that person. We had a case in Cape Town where a young woman, Alticia Kortia, went to a magistrate's court to apply for a domestic violence order. She filled up the register, she got in, and she then left carrying the forms. And 4 days later she was killed, and her young daughter. Now we were so concerned about why did that happen, why did she come to court, which must have taken some effort, and then leave without getting the order. So we've actually have asked the public protector public protector's office to investigate, to try and establish why did she leave. We've had another situation in Cape Town. This was at Cape Town Magistrates Court, the other was at Belleville, where a person comes to court. It was during the lockdown, so access was restricted, and she says she got the security guard outside radioed in and was told that no, she must come back on Monday. Now obviously everybody denies that, but those are the things that we want to investigate, so that people get the service that they're entitled to.
All right. 0800 314 446. I'll tell you what, we're not going to take your calls live on air, but we're going to, if you call in, they're going to write in your question and we should be able to engage it. So otherwise, if you want to just write it, you can basically do it also on Facebook page for the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Now, DM Carl Modise is saying it is a good law, but there are consequences or measures. Are there consequences or measures in place for women who will break or abuse this law? It seems like possibly he's talking
false accusations.
Yes, yes.
Let me just say that these laws, and particularly the Domestic Violence Act, they are not for women only. They are for anyone. So there are cases where women abuse men. They are not that many statistically, but a man can apply for a domestic violence order against his female partner. They can apply to same-sex couples, can apply. So it's not like a woman victim, male perpetrator kind of situation. Anyone can use it. But the reality is that gender-based violence is men beating up, killing women.
That is in South Africa.
In South Africa,
mainly prevalent.
Mainly, yes. But a man can use it to get protection from his partner who is beating him up or assaulting him or abusing him. Yeah.
But isn't that trend actually discourages men, because many of them with that real experience will be saying, I go to the police station and a police official will start laughing at me.
Yeah, well, that is a huge problem, and that's where the police official should be disciplined. So even issues of male rape, usually by other men, there have been complaints that the victims, the survivors, get victimized by the police, some of the police who don't want to help them. So that is a problem. But just going back to the question around what happens if it's false information.
Yes.
So let me just say, with the Domestic Violence Act, it's a two-stage process. You go to court, you make an affidavit, you get an interim order.
Yes.
It's an interim order, a temporary order. There's what's called a return date when you've got to return to court. So in the first stage, the court, the intention is to grant the order easily,
Yes.
and then allow, so that the victim has protection.
Mm-hmm.
Not to hear from the abuser what his version is of what happened.
That's right.
But with the return date, which is where a decision is going to be taken as to whether the order is going to be made final or not,
Mm-hmm.
that's when the alleged abuser has the opportunity to come to court and say, no, this lady is not telling the truth, I didn't beat her, etc., etc., and give his own versions.
I poked
So
her
that's-
with a finger and whatever. Yeah.
That's how that basically works. There's also provision for if you make a false affidavit. I mean, even with the Sexual Offences Act, women get many women get raped. Many women don't report the rape.
Mm.
And they don't report the rape, I think, because they're worried about will they be believed.
Mm.
You can have a situation where a woman and a man are out on a date.
Mhm.
They like each other. The woman likes the man. They drink alcohol. She agrees to go round to his place.
Mm.
Maybe at that time she's wanting to have sex with him. But when she gets to his place, she's free to say, I don't want sex.
Yeah. Change
Okay.
your mind.
Change your mind. No means no.
Mm.
So but in that situation, he might well say, no, it was consensual sex, and she might be unwilling to press charges because she won't be able to prove that.
Mm.
So that does make things difficult. But obviously, we don't want to stop people reporting cases that are underreported. Rape is underreported. By penalizing people too harshly, if the allegations are not true.
Mm. Mm. So the three bills, do they come directly as a result of the presidential summit on GBV that happened last year? Is it solely from there, or is it something that has been going on just being complemented by the summit that was held?
The summit I think was actually 2018, and
Oh, sorry, yeah, 2 years
it was a
back.
declaration that came out from that. It was at the end of 2018. Yes, one of the provisions was for the laws to be reviewed. We were having some problems with the National Register of Sex Offenders, so it was already apparent that changes needed to be made in terms of the legislation on that. On the Domestic Violence Act, it's an old act. We've also got a more recent law called the Protection from Harassment Act, which is when you're being harassed but not by a domestic partner. So somebody's stalking you, somebody's harassing you, but they're not part of your household. And with them, so that act is more modern than the Domestic Violence Act. So some work was already being done in terms of updating the Domestic Violence Act, but the main push came from the presidential summit.
All right. 0800 314 446, 0800 314 446. This is the first episode of season 6 of Let's Talk Justice. We are on up until 7:05. So if you still have any issue that you would like to engage us on, please do that. And unfortunately, we won't be able to put you directly on air, but we are definitely able to read your comments, your questions, as well as any other matter that might be arising from the topic that we are talking about today. Also, we are on social media at DOJCD_ZA. That is Twitter. And then on Facebook, we are on Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Tonight, we are talking the 3 bills that were approved by Cabinet in the past 2 weeks that are talking to issues of gender-based violence. That is a second pandemic to the COVID that we are trying to grapple with in our midst. And also, we're hoping that these bills are able to actually mean something positive to your life. Are you being abused or are you abusing? It's very hard to be talking DM to people who actually are perpetrators. Is there somewhere in the bill where we are encouraging an interaction of some kind, where we are able to get the perspective of where does this come from really?
I think that's another question, and a very important question, and that is that the law and the state can only do so much when it comes to sexual offences, to rapes, to the murders of women, to gender-based violence, domestic violence. These crimes are being committed by men. They're not being committed by some strange group of men who live in a particular part of town or they're from a particular area. They're all men.
Yep.
Okay, and so there are issues of toxic masculinity, those kinds of questions. But I think we all need to be asking ourselves, particularly us as men, is why is this happening? When some of our friends are boasting around their conquests with women, do we ever say, actually, you're not such a great man by having had sex with so many women? How many did those women actually want to have sex with you?
Yeah.
Did they know you were just looking for making another notch on your belt because they thought that you were that you were in love with them?
Yeah.
So I think we've got to, amongst our own circles, start interrogating that. If we have a friend who is responsible for gender-based violence, do they carry on being our friends? Can you have I wouldn't be able to have a friend who's a racist.
Yep.
But I was just thinking about it. I think that men are maybe lenient when it comes to gender-based violence. That, oh no, that's sort of, these things happen. But it's not right, and it should be subject to the same problems as other crimes, other immoral crimes. We need to ask ourselves about how we're bringing up our children, particularly the boy child.
Yep.
That they are treating women like this. Some of the crimes are quite difficult to understand, where men seem to get so emotionally involved that they seem to be devoid of reason or logic. They will kill their partner, then they'll kill themselves, and they will have children who are left behind, young children. Now, how can you be so self-centered that you can't think about, I'm going to kill these children's mother, then I'm going to kill myself, and these kids must just do whatever?
Yeah.
Why can't he walk away? Why can't he leave the woman, the mother of the children, and walk away
And just do something.
Yeah.
Because basically what the DM is also saying, Buffett, we have this thing of idolizing badness within our townships. It blindly out. And when we say that, basically, he would be a criminal of some sort. He would be some guy who's like very aggressive, and he earns respect out of being feared. And that's it brings me to the culture of living. I would just put it as the culture of living, because almost every tribe has a culture. And now, sometimes we want to make culture an excuse to actually say, this is why these things are happening. First and foremost, there will be a lobola payment, where at the end of the day, you only pay for assets. And what does the law say in that? Because it's quite a huge contradiction, or maybe it's quite a huge misunderstanding, where somebody feels like they are entitled simply because they paid out money.
Well, that's obviously completely wrong, and I mean that's even against, as I understand it, against tradition. You're not buying a wife.
Yep.
You're making a payment to the family and joining the families.
All right.
But I think that's part of, look, there's also, there's a lot of notions of male masculinity, of Yeah, there's a whole lot of issues, but definitely as men we need to do more. Our country is in a crisis on gender-based violence.
Just elaborating on that one, George here is saying, DM, what does the law say if a person got raped and the families decide to resolve issues on their own without reporting the case or even going the legal route?
That's a problem because rape is a serious offence, and it's punishable with minimum sentences, long sentences and life sentences in particular cases. So the problem that I have with the families getting together and resolving the issue, usually with the payment of some form of damages to the family of the woman who's been raped, is I would think in most cases the man gets away with at the most a slap on the wrist.
Yes.
Those damages that are paid, do they actually compensate the woman for what she's been through? I am aware that I mean one of the areas that I'm concerned about, which is a high prevalence of rape, is Umlazi in eThekwini.
Yes.
And the number of sexual offences cases reported at the police station have been going up. The number of cases going into the court have been going down. Now, we did have a problem of a magistrate there who's been suspended for, amongst others, giving very lenient sentences for serious rapes. And I do wonder to what extent have people lost faith in the law and the judicial system in that particular area, where they feel, it's not worth going through this trial. Let's rather settle it ourselves, and the guy, the guy can pay damages. The other problem with that, with the family sorting it out, is I don't know what the statistics are, but I would be concerned that a man who's raped once may well rape again.
Exactly.
So he rapes this girl, the family sort it out, damages are paid, he's got away, and he may rape someone else. That's also why, I mean, look, it's obviously very easy for me as a man to talk, but why I would urge women to report rapes, because the guy will do it again.
And also maybe I might think that the expertise in terms of, it might not just be a legal solution, but also the expertise in terms of dealing with such kind of sensitive issues where you don't have a psychological background, where you don't have a legal background, things that actually work directly towards resolving the problem. Somebody in the family might not have that one.
Yeah.
But anyway, before we left with 5 minutes, quickly, Margaret from Uppington is saying, what must be the first response of the police when a victim reports an incident at the police station? How should the victim be treated and be responded to? I believe we're speaking towards the amendment of the bill as well, because it has been there before.
Yeah, look, it doesn't specify. I mean, because it's sort of obvious. I mean, one, the police are trying to set up victim-friendly rooms where these kinds of matters can be reported, because you don't necessarily want to, in a crowded charge office, report that personal stuff like that. So they are trying to roll out these victim-friendly rooms, but obviously the victim needs to be treated with sympathy and with respect. That's what they can expect, and they should be assisted. They should check, is this person safe? Once she's left here, where is she going to go? If it is the husband who's abusing her, is she safe to go home? There are shelters that people can be sent to, even on a sort of short-term basis. Does she need to go there? That would be part of the job of the police. Then it would be taking the statement. It would be also ensuring that they get medical attention if there's physical injuries.
Yes. I'm not sure of the name, but they are from Pretoria. They say, what do I do if a person accuses me of being abusive? or being against him. I'm not sure if it makes sense to me, but he says, what do I do if a person accuses me of being abusive or being against him, when in actual fact they are the ones being abusive? How do I defend? You know, the blame game.
The blame game.
The blame game.
Look, I think that in relationships, they're only going to work if people are honest with each other and with themselves. So I would say if your partner is saying to you you're being abusive, you need to actually have a deep reflection on that. You need to, without getting emotional, ask them, okay, why do you think that? When was I abusive? But without getting emotional and threatening and shouting and all those kinds of things, and reflect on it. Because maybe they're right. We are human beings. We're not perfect. Yes, human beings can also be manipulative, and even in relationships. I mean, that's where it's often played out.
That's right.
Both men and women can be extremely manipulative in relationships. But I think the issue is to, this is not meant to be a counseling session, but I would really urge couples to be honest with each other and honest with themselves, and think about what the other person has said to them. I know we're running out of time. I just wanted, I don't know if you've got any more questions. I wanted to just put a quick plug for the gender-based violence command center line, which is 0800 428 428. And it's where people want to look for assistance, report gender-based violence. So 0800 428 428, and you can also SMS help to 31531, or you can send a please call me, which is *120 *786 hash. So that's also when you're being abused and you're not getting helped and you're looking for help, that you can send that. Obviously you'd need to be phoning, I guess, from a cell phone for the please call me and the SMS.
All right. Now, a lot of people might just ask, out of my head, DM, to say, I had some discussions during the week talking about bringing back the death penalty, particularly for GBV. And now, I would say this has been an ongoing discussion for various crimes that have actually hurt people. And many of them would be like, if anybody rapes my daughter, the best thing I would really get out of that is to hear that they are dead. And the South African Constitution has not promoted death penalty anyhow. Now, in coming up with these bills, what was the discussion around considering death penalty? Because many people have made that contribution towards the department to say, are you able to bring in the death penalty? But what is the logic behind that?
Look, I think people want the death penalty back because they're angry and they want retribution. We had the death penalty before democracy. We were, I think, the second highest country in the world for executing people.
Sure.
It was a conveyor belt. People were being executed. The Constitution says there's a right to life. The first case before the Constitutional Court was whether the death penalty was constitutional or not. And it's worth reading that judgment, but it's basically, there are issues of the death penalty isn't a deterrent. People are afraid of being caught, not of being executed. In fact, people who commit horrible crimes may well want to be killed. It's easier for them than to have to live with what they've done. There's issues like the people who will be executed if we have the death penalty will be the poor people. The rich people will be hiring lawyers and getting loads of
the best of legal expertise.
That's what happens in all countries. It is the marginalized, it's the poor who get executed. You make a mistake, and sometimes mistakes are made in law, in courts, and somebody is innocent. You make a mistake, they've served 10 years, 20 years, okay, that's bad, but at least you can let them out. You can give them some compensation or whatever. You've executed them, there's no mistake. And internationally, more and more countries are abolishing the death penalty because it's being seen across the world as not the right way to go.
All right. DM, unfortunately, we have run out of time. I really wish as time goes by with the next episodes in the series, we'll be able to speak to each and every bill so that we are able to speak in length about that. The scourge of gender-based violence and femicide is rooted very deep in our societies and norms. Gender inequalities, your social, economical inequalities, family dysfunctions, social low social value attached to women and girls, and all those things that we know that we are doing. Some of the core drivers of this pandemic cannot be dealt with by law alone. And DM has already alluded to many ways where we cannot only rely on government, because government is actually trying to put something in place where Rona as citizens we are able to support as well as work with government to make this thing to actually come to a certain conclusion of positivity. We therefore need to restore this culture of responsible parenting and also accountability so as to rehabilitate good family values and take responsibility in bringing back peace in our neighborhoods. Lastly, DM, let me just give you the last. I know you might want to speak about how this is attached to sexual offences courts, and maybe are people able to go to those offices where the sexual offences courts are to be able to be assisted in one way or the other?
Look, the sexual offences courts are courts to hear sexual offences crimes, so it's not the first place you go to.
Okay.
You go to the police. You can go to a Tutuzela care centre, which there aren't enough. They are slowly being rolled out, but they are attached to hospitals and clinics. And on our website, we've got a list of where they are. So that would be for a victim of a sexual offence. That's, I think, the first port of call they should go to. Otherwise, the police.
All right. Okay, this has been a special broadcast. Thank you very much, DM, for gracing us with your presence and the insight into the 3 bills that have been approved. As we said, they were approved just about a few weeks ago to actually curb and deal with the issue of gender-based violence. From now, Mosotho Stone, I say keep on working hard to make sure that your society, it starts with you. It starts with you ending. It starts with you somewhere at school. It starts with you in church, where we do not categorize ourselves according to gender differences, which at the end of the day ends up making us feel like it's you against them. That in itself makes us people who are at loggerheads with each other. From me, Mosotho Stone, thank you so very much to Fano Mudau. That's what you've been seeing on social media. Thank you very much to Mfundo Makaba. That's what you've been listening to on all the radio stations across the country. And thanks to Ozaza, who has been taking our calls and making it possible for us to hear your opinion. From me, Mosotho Stone, thank you so very much. Until next week. All right.
I'm sorry about this. Then I actually was. I could have done it in Victoria next time.
I think Victor was not sure that you